Why is the United States helplessly watching as China dominates the global rare earth market? In April 2025, Beijing implemented sweeping new export controls on 7 rare earth elements and permanent magnets derived from them, materials that underpin both modern life and modern warfare. In fighter jets, missiles, electric vehicles, drones, wind turbines, and even data centers, high-performance magnets made from rare earth minerals are indispensable. By restricting their flow, China is not just showcasing its industrial might, it's revealing a dangerous vulnerability in the US and the rest of the world. These latest moves signal Beijing's willingness and ability to weaponize global dependence. This isn't a new challenge. For over 15 years, the US has known its critical mineral supply chain was overly centralized, dangerously fragile, and deeply exposed to China's leverage and control. Yet, across both Democratic and Republican administrations, there's been no urgent or coherent response. Today, the consequences of that failure are tightening their grip across US commerce and defense sectors. Following negotiations in London, Washington and Beijing announced on June 27 a new trade framework allowing China to continue approving rare earth export licenses for the next 6 months. U.S. officials publicly celebrated the breakthrough, yet revealed few details of what was exchanged. That leaves key questions unanswered. What did the U.S. trade away? How will enforcement work? And what happens when the 6 months are over? Skepticism is running high. Ford recently paused production at its Chicago plant due to a magnet shortage, underscoring that even short-term disruptions carry real consequences. Paper agreements can't substitute for supply chain resilience. Without transparency, timely approvals, and long-term planning, this could easily become another cycle of diplomatic one step forward, 2 steps back. Even this temporary reprieve comes with risk. Dozens of companies across Europe and North America have described China's export licensing process as highly intrusive, requiring detailed production data, end-use applications, facility photos, customer names, and transaction history. Several applicants have been denied for failing to provide such specifics, including documentation or images of their end users. Executives say this amounts to official data extraction. While companies are advised not to disclose sensitive IP, omitting key details can lead to indefinite delays. For firms in the defense supply chain, these implications are alarming. The extracted commercial intelligence could be used to map competitors, undercut pricing, or advance Chinese substitutes. This isn't just about licensing. It's about surveillance and competitive intelligence. And until the U.S. builds secure, independent capacity across the entire critical mineral supply chain, it remains exposed to both disruption and data risk. This vulnerability didn't emerge overnight. Back in 2010, China cut off rare earth exports to Japan during a maritime dispute, a clear warning the U.S. noticed but failed to act on. In 2014, the Obama administration won a WTO case against China's export restrictions, but mistakenly believed a legal victory would prevent further manipulation. What the Trump and Biden administrations did. The first Trump administration recognized rare earths as critical, yet notably exempted them from 2018 tariffs on Chinese goods, perhaps an implicit admission of U.S. dependency. President Biden took the most structured approach to date. Executive Order 14017, the Critical Minerals Task Force, and funding through the IIJA and IRA. Strategic partnerships like the Mineral Security Partnership were launched, but progress has been slow, hindered by permitting delays and inconsistent allied commitments. The second Trump administration has returned with more aggressive measures, invoking Section 232, activating the Defense Production Act, and proposing major funding increases for FY 2026. The National Energy Dominance Council now coordinates efforts. Yet these actions, like China's 6-month pause, have not broken Beijing's grip. Notably, the U.S. defense sector remains completely excluded from the licensing agreement. The recent G7 summit in Canada highlighted growing global concern. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen directly accused China of weaponizing its control over rare earths, calling for a united G7 response. The result? The G7 Critical Minerals Action Plan. Though China wasn't named, the implication was clear. The plan commits G7 members to raise ESG standards and traceability for critical minerals, fund new extraction and processing projects, and collaborate on recycling, substitution, and refining technology. Predictably, Beijing responded with anger. China's foreign ministry dismissed the plan as a pretext for protectionism and accused the G7 of stirring confrontation to protect market share. Brussels is now signaling that EU-China trade talks have effectively stalled, raising the likelihood of Chinese retaliation, particularly against Europe. If China doubles down, it risks pushing the EU, Japan, South Korea, and India further into Washington's orbit, precisely what Beijing hoped to avoid. China's rare earth dominance. The raw numbers are staggering. China accounts for about 70% of global rare earth mining, but over 90% of refining capacity. It produces 92% of the world's neodymium iron boron magnets, found in everything from submarines to Teslas. This dominance is no accident. China has heavily subsidized processing, pursued global acquisitions across the entire supply chain, and scaled up far faster than Western nations have been able to permit a single new mine. U.S. sites like MP Materials' Mountain Pass and Round Top remain incomplete without downstream processing. The Department of Defense and Department of Energy have provided grants, and Trump's 2026 budget earmarks more funds to expand domestic capacity. But these efforts still pale in comparison to China's decades-long lead and centralized industrial command. China moved early and decisively into Africa and Latin America, partnering with governments in the DRC, Bolivia, and Chile, investing in ports, rail, and refining infrastructure. In contrast, U.S. engagement has been fragmented and value-driven, emphasizing transparency and governance, vital principles, but less compelling when it comes to raw mineral urgency. Even recent MOUs with Ukraine and the DRC remain symbolic, bogged down by conflict and instability. The London talks and the new trade framework have bought time, but without a strategy, time solves nothing. China's licensing regime remains intact. Its data demands persist. The defense sector remains excluded. Meanwhile, threats from Congress to slash funding for clean energy and industrial policy could stall rare earth projects just as they're gaining traction. This is an inflection point. China is betting that America's internal divisions between labor, industry, environmentalists, tribal nations, and political factions will prevent the kind of unified, sustained effort needed to compete. They might be right. America must prove them wrong. Critical minerals are not just commodities. They are geopolitical power. The U.S. must stop treating critical minerals as mere trade goods and start treating them as tools of national power, as China already does. Escaping China's grip will require far more than mining permits and temporary funding. It demands a coherent, long-term strategy to build a complete, secure supply chain, not just domestically, but with trusted allies and partners. From extraction and refining to magnet manufacturing and recycling, every link must be fortified through targeted investment, permitting reform, and strategic coordination. A successful and lasting policy requires commitment from one administration to the next. The U.S. also can't rely on rhetoric to win over allies. Countries like the DRC, Chile, and Indonesia need durable partnerships backed by financing, technology transfers, and infrastructure investments, not just governance lectures. The 6-month export pause from China isn't a solution. It's a stress test. It will show whether the U.S. can finally focus and act, or whether it will once again slip into complacency. Beijing is betting on the latter. Washington must respond with urgency, unity, and strategic clarity that meets the scale of the challenge. There's still time, but not much. Is the West too late to catch up, or can America and its allies finally break free from China's rare earth dominance? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and follow for more deep investigations into the hidden power struggles shaping our world.